This week on Vaticano, join the celebration of Easter at the heart of the Church. Witness a historic moment as all Christians celebrate Easter together, a rare convergence of calendars. Travel to Nicaea for the 1700th anniversary of the council that helped shape the foundations of Christianity. Hear from Father Narcyz Klimas as he reflects on the remarkable discoveries from excavations in 2016. Plus, explore the mystery of the Stigmata, signs that continue to inspire awe and devotion. Vaticano starts now. Palms in hands blowing in the wind, the faithful in procession around the obelisk and St. Peter's Square filled with thousands of faces from all over the world. Holy Week has begun, and these are the most spectacular days of the year here at the Vatican.
The Pope and the Vatican, all ceremonies of Holy Week attract many, and this has been so for centuries. In the 19th century, many non-Catholics participated in the rites of Holy Week because of their magnificent beauty and the impression they make.
Touching moments of prayer, starting with the Solemnity of Palm Sunday, require days of preparations, for which a special entity of the Holy See is responsible, the Apostolic Floreria, the florist of the Vatican. Its main task consists of the logistical preparation of the ceremonies inside the Vatican Basilica and in St. Peter's Square. The workshops of the Floreria are located in the hidden courtyards of the Apostolic Palace. The director of the office, engineer Paolo Sagretti, knows very well that Holy Week is the busiest period of the year. And now, with the ongoing Jubilee of Hope, the situation is even more challenging.
The atmosphere during these days is always that of expectation. It's very special. We know that for us, who as a service have to accomplish the preparation of all the ceremonies, it is a very busy year. There are 54 Jubilee ceremonies in addition to ordinary ones, like Easter, so we have to prepare everything very well.
Together with the Vatican gardeners, the staff of the Floreria is called upon to prepare the decorations in St. Peter's Square, set up olive trees and thousands of flowers donated to the Pope traditionally by Holland, along with rows of seats for the pilgrims due to arrive.
We have additional difficulties as we have to complete the preparations with all the people coming in and out. You don't close the basilica or the square. You try not to close, as you should give the people a chance to visit these places. They come to see St. Peter's, and it is right that after they have made a long trip, you give them such an opportunity. However, it is complicated for us to work efficiently in this way.
The preparation for the Holy Triduum, a crucial moment of the entire Holy Week, begins in the Vatican a week before Palm Sunday, on the 5th Sunday of Lent, traditionally known as Passion Sunday, when the relic of Veronica's veil takes center stage in an ancient rite in St. Peter's Basilica.
However, on this day in Rome, in St. Peter's Basilica, the Romans have this jealous opportunity to look once more on the face of Christ. Before we don't look on the crucifix, we don't look on the face of Christ for another 2 weeks until Good Friday, when the crosses are unveiled for us to venerate.
The relic is referenced in the 6th station of the Way of the Cross, where a woman named Veronica wipes the face of Jesus with a cloth as he carries the cross to Calvary. The Vatican tradition to venerate the relic goes back to the Middle Ages.
Innocent III established his procession in the Vatican neighborhood with the veil of Veronica, which already drew so many pilgrims to Rome, especially for this procession. And Pope Boniface VIII was participating in this procession in January of the year 1300. He wanted pilgrims to experience looking upon the face of Christ in Veronica's veil. And so he called the first Jubilee year of 1300.
Now, 725 years later, another holy year, called by Pope Francis the Jubilee of Hope, is being celebrated. This time, even more special as the resurrection falling on April the 20th will be commemorated in common by all Christian rites, and St. Peter's Square is already attracting crowds of faithful.
Con Paolo VI, la piazza diventa.
Already, with Pope Paul VI, St. Peter's Square became a beautiful liturgical setting. And on Holy Thursday, in the morning, the Chrism Mass inside of St. Peter's is celebrated, while the afternoon Mass in Cena Domini used to be done not at St. Peter's, but in Rome's cathedral, which is St. John Lateran.
The mother of all churches houses the precious relic of the wooden table of the Last Supper, brought by tradition to Rome from Jerusalem as spoils of the First Jewish War by Emperor Titus in the year 70.
Poi Papa Francesco ha cambiato e
With Pope Francis, that tradition has changed, and the rite of washing of the feet, as he would do in Buenos Aires, has been taken to prisons or other places where you touch suffering most palpably.
si tocca di più la sofferenza.
Good Friday is the only day of the year when no Mass is celebrated in the Church's tradition. Still, St. Peter's Basilica is filled with faithful reaching from all corners of the earth to commemorate Christ in His Passion and to see the Holy Father. Though Pope Francis, still recuperating after a 40-day hospitalization at the Gemelli Polyclinic Hospital, will not preside over the Triduum celebrations for the first time in his 12-year-long pontificate.
Il Papa è solo.
Anyway, the Pope is just a representative of the Lord, a Pope who resembled very much Pope Francis. Pius X, in the early 1900s, used to get angry when people applauded him, and he used to tell them, "No, you should applaud our Lord. You should applaud Jesus Christ."
Signore, dovrete applaudire Cristo.
Even then, thousands of pilgrims coming to Rome for Easter are filled with desire to see the Holy Father, even for a moment, as it was on Palm Sunday when Pope Francis appeared unexpectedly at the end of Mass.
Buona Domenica delle Palme. Buona Settimana Santa.
And the crowd filled the square with its cheers. We'll be right back, diving into the anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, right here on Vaticano.
في نيقيا وفي الموقع الذي يظن أنه المكان الذي فيه عقد.
By a lake outside of Iznik, a small town in Turkey, stands Gregory III Laham, Patriarch Emeritus of Antioch and all the East, of Alexandria and Jerusalem. The former spiritual leader of the Greek Melkite Catholic Church recites the Creed in Greek. The Council of Nicaea took place here, exactly 1,700 years ago. It was also the birthplace of the Nicene Creed.
The council in Nicaea, today is Iznik, the name of today, and it's been very important because it's been the first ecumenical.
Father Giovanni Biallo traveled to Turkey with a group of pilgrims from Rome to visit the site of this council. They were joined by Sister Rebecca Nazzaro, the director of the Diocese of Rome's Pilgrim Office, Opera Romana Pellegrinaggi.
We recite the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed every Sunday, but we don't realize how much we had to fight for it, how much struggle there was between the various theologians. There was also a fight against the heresies that did not recognize Jesus Christ as true God and true man.
The Council of Nicaea in 325 was groundbreaking, as it rejected the heresy of Arianism and affirmed the full divinity of Jesus Christ. Church historians, such as the German professor Matthias Simperl, note that in 325, the Roman Emperor Constantine, concerned at the crisis the heresy was causing, called for the first ecumenical council in history, a gathering of the Church's bishops with the support of Pope St. Sylvester I.
We can assume that there were meetings, as reported by contemporary and later sources. These were sessions in which all the council participants came together, in which public deliberations were held, including under the chairmanship of the emperor. We also know that disputes arose at the council, that bishops had to justify their controversial beliefs.
There was a great crisis at the time, which came mainly from Alexandria in Egypt, where the presbyter Arius held the opinion of a very strict monotheism, a very strict one-God faith. In his opinion, Jesus Christ cannot be the Son of God at all. The synods in Alexandria were unable to solve this problem, which is why the Emperor Constantine convened a council and invited 1,800 bishops, 318 of whom attended, including Saint Nicholas of Myra.
Is the legend that St. Nicholas slapped Arius in the face true?
That is how it is handed down. I don't know whether that was really the case, but it would be the outward expression of his inner attitude. St. Nicholas was truly convinced that we must confess Christ.
Even decades later, Nicaea was a resource on which church unity could be built, theologically. The divisions of the 4th century no longer play a role in ecumenical dialogue today. Almost all Christian denominations are united on the Trinitarian question.
After all, this year, Orthodox and Catholic Christians are celebrating Easter on the same day. Together with Pope Francis, Cardinal Kurt Koch is committed to ensuring that Catholics and Orthodox will always have a common Easter date in the future.
And the other dimension is the ecumenism of blood, which Pope Francis strongly underlined. Pope Francis asked the question, if our enemies unite us in death, how can we continue to divide ourselves?
Easter is the most sacred moment of the liturgical year, and it draws our hearts to the place where it all began, the Lord's tomb in Jerusalem. But how do we know that this is truly the burial place of Jesus? And is the stone inside the same one where his body once lay? Our Vatican correspondent, Magdalena Wolinska-Riedi, speaks with Father Narcyz Klimas, a Franciscan friar who took part in the 2016 excavations that uncovered remarkable evidence.
How is it possible for us today, after 2,000 years, to pin down the specific and exact location of the tomb?
Various examples have been found confirming that this was the place. At one point behind the chapel of St. Helena, which is looked after by the Armenians, there is the chapel of St. Gregory, and in the back, behind the altar, on the foundations of the chapel, there is a stone with a barge, with a small mast engraved on it, and on the barge is written Domini Evimus in Latin, meaning, Lord, we are coming, which is a typical sign left by pilgrims who went to the Holy Land. Besides, there were oral transmissions after all. There were people living there who remembered the apostles, about whom they heard the exact story, passing on this tradition orally, from father to son.
What emotions accompanied you during this, and can we really acknowledge this stone as the Holy Stone?
It was October 26, 2016. We were standing in front of the closed grave. There were representatives of those three rites that take care of the Holy Sepulchre. the Orthodox, Armenians, and us Catholics, and we were waiting for the stone to be taken down. Well, it was incredible tension among us because we knew that the last time the stone had been taken down was in 1555. It was something indescribable, and I remember we waited quite a long time while the stone was being slowly pulled down. I tried not to look at it at the beginning, and finally, like I was literally standing in front of the entrance to the tomb of Christ, through the corner of my eye, I saw that there was nothing, and I said, "There is no stone." There was rubble and dust, and no stone was visible. We all were very sad, but we didn't find the stone. The next morning, I was working in the archives. Suddenly, a confrère came running in and shouting from the entrance, "The stone is there! Run to the tomb!" And another brother joined me saying, "Let's run, the stone is there!" And we ran like Peter and John on Resurrection Sunday to the tomb of Christ. We literally fell inside, and indeed, the Greek monk who stood guarding the place with a smile on his face, very friendly, said to us, "Come in, there is the stone." And we went in and saw the stone. It was a gray-white, very hard limestone, typical of Jerusalem of the time. This stone was full of carved holes by pilgrims who came there in the first centuries before the place was built up. They broke off pieces of the rock to take with them as relics, and in the place where Jesus Christ's head rested, a small channel was carved into the rock to drain the man's bodily fluids so that the decaying body would survive as long as possible. In the case of Jesus Christ, it wasn't necessary, because after all, he rose from the dead on the third day. But this confirms that the tomb was made according to the tradition of Jewish burial, and this is another testimony about it being an authentic place.
Can you please tell us how it happened that your order, the Franciscans, settled down in this unique place on earth, in the Holy Land, more than 800 years ago, and how are you continuing to serve there until today?
W 1217 roku święty Franciszek rozsyła braci na różne strony świata.
After the first chapter in Assisi in 1217, St. Francis sent his brothers to different parts of the world. Several of them reached Arc in Palestine, today's Holy Land, and founded the first monastery there. Later, St. Francis himself arrived there in 1219. In 1342, Pope Clement VI, by papal bull, granted the custody of the holy places to the Franciscans. This was referred to as the custody of the Holy Land, and from then on we have had a papal mandate to take care of these holy places until now. The Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the Basilica of Christmas in Bethlehem, and the tomb of Our Lady of Gethsemane by the Olive Garden in the Cedron Valley. These are the three places where we share custody with other Christian rites, while the other shrines are directly under our custody. Except for the fact that we are representatives of the Vatican there. We take care of these places. They are not our property. The Vatican is the owner.
Thank you.
Thank you for the interview.
Stay tuned. We'll return shortly to explore the mystery of the Stigmata, only on Vaticano. Every year, the Stations of the Cross retrace Jesus' journey to the crucifixion, one of the most profound moments in Christian spirituality. The crucifixion stands as the most significant moment, embodying the ultimate sacrifice and suffering of Jesus. It is so central to the faith that the cross itself has become the very symbol of Christianity.
Christianity has been marked, we could say, by the cross from the very beginning. If we even think the most common form of self-identification as a Christian is making the sign of the cross, where we, in a certain sense, impose the cross on our body as a sign of identification with Christ and with his suffering on the cross.
Over the centuries, there have been extraordinary accounts of people who have shown the marks of Jesus' crucifixion on their bodies, with wounds appearing on their hands, feet, and side. These marks are known to the world as stigmata, a miraculous event first documented in the extraordinary case of St. Francis of Assisi during 40 days of meditation in Laverna, Tuscany, a small town where a Franciscan sanctuary now stands.
In 1224, St. Francis came here. He was spending 40 days in preparation for the feast of St. Michael and the Archangels, which is on September 29th. So Francis prayed something that to me and perhaps to you seems a little peculiar. It was that he could feel on his body the physical pains that Christ had when he was on the cross. Francis was in prayer. He was in an ecstatic prayer. And the sources say that a seraph, a six-winged seraph, appeared in the sky as if there was a man sort of fastened to this angel on a cross, and Francis could see the wounds on this man, and then immediately he felt this piercing pain and suffering in his hands, feet, and side.
For many, they are undeniable evidence of God's presence, yet there are also countless skeptics. One of the most famous cases is that of Padre Pio, whose stigmata were placed under scientific scrutiny in order to debunk this spiritual mystery. But the outcomes revealed astonishing and inexplicable results.
So it was recommended to bandage the wounds for 8 days, that there would be no tampering with them, and see what happened. So they did, and at the end of 8 days they removed the bandages, and the result was that the wounds were still open before, they were open after. They looked exactly the same. They were still bleeding and open. And the conclusion was that this is something that's not natural, because naturally the body will either, if it has an open wound, it will either heal or it'll get worse. It'll get infected and then eventually putrefy. So it goes one of the two directions, gets better or gets worse. With Padre Pio, after 8 days, the wounds remained the same, which the conclusion was that this is against the course of nature. It was really something supernatural was happening.
The stigmata remain an unsolved mystery to this day, with hundreds of people claiming them throughout the years. To this day, the Church doesn't have an official standing on this phenomenon, but they definitely raise a lot of interest among believers and non-believers alike. Yet the haunting question persists: why, if stigmata are an event intrinsically tied to Jesus' suffering, must they be shared by others? And above all, why are they bound to a realm of pain?
The joy of Easter is a natural consequence, really, of what comes before it on Good Friday. The suffering is a condition for arriving at the glory of the children of God with the resurrection. And the wonderful thing about the Paschal mystery that we celebrate at Easter is this transformation of something that looks tragic is in fact a victory over death. The death of Jesus on the cross puts to death death itself.